Hello, I'm John. Welcome back to my channel. I've got 3 books to share with you today. The first book is Alistair MacLean's Ice Station Zebra. This is from 1963. I think it's a really good example of the better efforts of Alistair MacLean's writing. So there's a main character called Dr. Carpenter. He is a doctor. He's a real doctor, but that's not his name. He's actually a British secret agent who is being ordered aboard a U.S. military nuclear submarine, which is being sent north to go underneath the Arctic ice to find Ice Station Zebra, which is supposedly a meteorological station which has burnt down, and their job is to go and find it and rescue the survivors. Only we know that Dr. Carpenter is a secret agent. Nobody else aboard the submarine knows. And we gradually become aware, as Dr. Carpenter tells us. We don't get this whole story in one chunk. It's played out over the whole book. That what's actually going on at this station is secret military work, and the Soviets badly want to get a hold of it. And it's very likely that what's happened at Ice Station Zebra is not an accident, that there are probably Soviet agents at work. And that bears out. When they finally get there, they find that, or Dr. Carpenter discovers that the people who supposedly died in a fire were actually murdered. And so someone in this, one of these survivors, is undoubtedly a Soviet agent, and they play this game of cat and mouse. Dr. Carpenter is trying to let the agent have enough rope to hang himself with, and it's just a really interesting back and forth there, and a lot of what Alistair MacLean did best is on display in this novel. So he wasn't particularly good with characters, but he was really good with plot, and he was really good with writing tense action scenes, and not particularly action scenes of, fist fighting or gunfights or anything like that, but he was really very good at writing storms, winter storms, and people dealing with the cold and hunger and fire, smoke, and just all kinds of things like that, dealing with these acts of sabotage aboard this submarine, dealing with the Arctic storms. When MacLean would write a book, he would take his characters all the way to their physical limits and then push them over even further. And there's something about that I find really likable about his books. And this is one of the better Alistair MacLean novels that I've read. Like I said, most of his, when he, later on in his career in particular, his quality started to go down. MacLean didn't like writing. He liked to come up with plots. He really didn't like to write. He liked the money. He wrote for money more than anything else. But some of his books are still really good, and this is a good example of that. There's a lot going on in this book, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. The next book I read was The Portable Sixties Reader, edited and with an introduction by Ann Charters. I really liked this. Now, it's the 60s as seen through the civil rights movement, counterculture, drug culture, feminist thought. It's really good. Now, there were some poems in here. This is an anthology of short stories, essays, and poems. And there were some poems in here I didn't really care for, but I'm not really a poetry kind of guy. I try to like poetry, but it just doesn't work on me. Even though there were a couple of poems in here that I really liked that I'll talk about. Let me see. I wrote down a few of the stories and things that I really liked, a few of the essays and stories about James Baldwin's The Dangerous Road Before Martin Luther King, Letter from a Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr., The Ballot or the Bullet by Malcolm X. Let's see, some poems here. Thomas Merton's Original Child Bomb, which is, it is a poem, but it's unlike any other poem I've ever read. It's more of a factual telling in bullet points of the bombing of Hiroshima. And I'm really interested in Thomas Merton. He was I think he was a Catholic monk, and I've got a few of his books over there. He wrote one called The Seven-Story Mountain, and the other one is called, I think, The Asian Journal. I'm not sure. There was a documentary I watched about Thomas Merton, and it was really interesting. It led me to want to read his books. Another poem, Yusuf Komanyaka's Hanoi Hannah, and Country Joe McDonald's Janis, which is about Janis Joplin. He had been in a relationship with Janis Joplin. I'm not sure if that was written after her death or before. Let's see, Sherman Alexie's Because My Father Always Said He Was the Only Indian Who Saw Jimi Hendrix Play the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock. And one that I really liked, it was from an excerpt of a book, Sexual Politics by Kate Millett, and it was about 5 or 6 pages of her tearing apart, just absolutely tearing apart Freud's theory of penis envy. That was, for me, I don't know why, I just really enjoyed that. I don't really like Freud. I've read Freud's interpretation of dreams, and I've always had a problem with Freud. But that's a separate video. I have to go back and read Freud again to explain to you exactly what my problems were with him, and I'm not willing to do that, I don't think. I have more Freud, though. I've got a big thing of Freud right over there from the Britannica set, and I also have a biography of Freud over there. But yeah, Freud, I really like that. Kate Millett's just tearing Freud apart there. I don't know if she's right or wrong, but I just enjoyed it. See, there are other stories, and some of the other people who contributed to this: Allen Ginsberg, Timothy Leary, Ken Kesey, Lenny Bruce, Hunter Thompson, Jim Carroll, Charles Bukowski, Ron Kovic, Abby Hoffman, Rachel Carson, Sylvia Plath, William Burroughs, Norman Mailer, and Tim O'Brien. But there are a whole lot of people who contributed to this book, or who are featured in this book. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Like I said, there are parts of it I didn't like. I wish that there had been more. I wish there had been some journalism coming out of Vietnam. I wish there had been some writing about Richard Nixon, about Lyndon Johnson. Maybe something by William F. Buckley. But other than that, it was pretty good. I really liked it, most of it. It was worth reading. And the next book I read was Falling Angel by William Hjortsberg. This is the basis for the film Angel Heart, which is a really good movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. This is the first time I've read this book. I've always been a little bit afraid to read this book because I thought that since I liked the movie a lot, maybe I would be bored by the book, if that makes sense. And I wasn't. I was completely captivated by this book, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen, more or less. I don't really know how I can talk about this very much without giving any spoilers. There's some really heavy foreshadowing in this book, and I think that's on purpose. It's so that the reader knows what's going on before the main character knows what's going on, even as he gradually brings it into the light. So what this is about, it's about a detective named Harry Angel who lives in New York City and works in Times Square. He's a private eye. He's hired by a man named Louis Cypher, to track down a singer named Johnny Favorite. Johnny Favorite was wounded during World War II. This takes place in 58 or 59, somewhere in that region. And Johnny Favorite has signed a contract with Louis Cypher, and Cypher wants to know if Favorite is still alive, because on Favorite's death, certain things go to Cypher, right? So that's pretty heavy-handed foreshadowing, I think. And so Harry Angel sets out on this quest to find Johnny Favorite. And one by one, the people he talks to wind up being killed. And it gradually comes out as he talks to more and more people that Johnny Favorite was very deeply wrapped up in black magic, Satanism, voodoo, whatever he could get his hands on. And it eventually comes out that Johnny Favorite made a deal with the devil to be famous. And yeah, the book goes into much darker places than the movie does, even though the movie's really dark in spots. Harry finds out that Johnny Favorite has had he had two lovers. One was like a high society debutante who was very interested in black magic also, and the other was a West Indian voodoo priestess who has a shop in, I think in Harlem, selling herbs and everything like that. He goes to the shop her name is Evangeline Proudfoot, but he finds out that Evangeline has died and left the store to her daughter Epiphany. And gradually Harry finds out that Epiphany is Johnny Favorite's daughter. And they start a relationship. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. So this is a really good book. I was really impressed by it. There are certain things in the book that I think were better done than in the movie. But I think that there were certain things in the movie that were done better than in the book. And I really can't talk about it more without giving the whole thing away. Yeah, so that's Falling Angel by William Hjortsberg. A good book and a good movie. Read the book, watch the movie. Just be aware it goes into some pretty dark places. This book goes into darker places than the movie. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.